Awesome. Well, welcome everyone, and thanks to all Windermere Homes and Estates team, agents, Rich Johnson, our entire staff team, our marketing department for joining today. Another wonderful Friday in San Diego and Riverside County, Palm Springs, Palm Desert. And this week we have an amazing guest. And first of all, just to let you know, I'm going to let the cat out of the bag here. This guest is actually April, our very own April's sister, kid sister. She's an educator, a buyer psychology master, a seven-figure digital entrepreneur and author. She is well known for her online marketing skills and tough love, no fluff sales strategy. Sound familiar, guys? Sound like someone else we know? Well, it is. So I am super, super, super fortunate to be able to bring to you Karrie Brady, who's going to be talking about all sorts of stuff, including cultivating sales opportunities, sales strategy, sales psychology. Sales psychology. Can you imagine? There's a psychology to this thing. And then how to detach the value of your work from the value of yourself. How to detach, I'm going to say this again, how to detach the value of your work from the value of yourself, which is so essential. Like if we're so wrapped up in us being equal to our work, we lose that kind of whole aspect of life. So that's just an amazing opportunity for all of us to learn more. And what I love is Karrie's not in real estate. She's worked with real estate agents, but she's worked with sales teams of all sizes and shapes and all industries. So we have someone that kind of brings to us this interesting sales psychology perspective without it being specific to one industry or another, because it works for all. And so just thanks so much, Karrie, for joining us today. How about that for an intro?
Yeah, I know. Thank you so much for having me. I'm super pumped to be here. Thanks, April, obviously, for the introduction. Worked with a lot of real estate agents before, so I'm pretty pumped to be able to kind of like come in here and talk to you guys.
Awesome. Well, okay, take us back. People need to know who this person is that we have invited onto this show. Take us back to how you showed up on the scene. Like, why are you and April? Like, I think you guys are anomalies of the system. Like, you guys are both so young and so skilled in this marketing, digital strategies. And I know that you've told me a little bit of what kind of pushed you so at such a young age to be so successful so young. I want people to know about that, but like, who's your parents? Like, what were these people like, right? Like, take us back a little bit so that everyone knows what we're dealing with here.
Yeah. So I will say that originally I did not have like an entrepreneurship bone in my body. I really did not think that I was cut out for this ever in my life. However, my dad got into a dirt bike accident when I was 19 and he actually ended up breaking his neck. So I kind of left college. I was going to school to be a biomedical engineer. I was hoping to work in like the physical training kind of realm. And so basically what I did is I left college and I moved home to be his full-time caretaker at the time. And I was like, okay, I need something that was a little bit more flexible, something that gave me a little bit more control. And I was like, the only way to do that is really to own my own business. So I kind of jumped in head first, the only way I knew how, just kind of using some skills I'd already acquired. And so I was a personal trainer. From there, I learned a lot, which I'm sure a lot of people can relate to. I learned a lot about what I didn't know. There was, a lot of hard learning lessons about, I didn't have a degree in business. I had no idea really what I was getting into. And for two and a half years, I really struggled because I thought, my skill would sell itself. Like I could get by on just referrals. I don't know if anyone else has felt that way before. I could just get by on word of mouth. I knew I cared more than anyone else. I knew that like my solid like understanding of what I was doing was really good. But my sales skills were trash, quite point blank. So it wasn't until about 2.5 years in, I started my business at 19. It wasn't about till 2.5 years in where I really figured out that I needed to master sales if I really wanted to see exponential growth. Like if I really wanted to really give this everything that I got and earn a very decent income, I needed to be better. And so it wasn't until then that I really kind of broke down, okay, what goes into sales? How can I be better? I really valued the problem enough to fix it. That's kind of what it came down to. After that, I started selling a lot better. I actually got brought on to do some sales for another person in the online space. And I sold $150,000 worth of her product in 6 months. which was great. And after that, she was like, more people need to understand how you're doing this. You should start teaching. I started teaching it. And, it's just kind of grown and grown over the last 3-4 years now. And, that's now like my thing, is just helping to teach other entrepreneurs how to be better at sales in a way that feels really good for them. Because I think a lot of times we kind of get into this not with the understanding that we're going to become a salesperson, right? They get into this and they're like, I just want to help people, or I just want to do X, Y, and Z skill. And you don't initially think you're getting into this to become a salesperson, except you kind of are, right? Because we need to sell in order to grow our business, grow our income. But sometimes we kind of get this idea that we're going to hate the person that we become when selling, because most of us hate salespeople. Like, they're kind of put as the bottom feeders, if you will. If you think of like Wolf on Wall Street or car salesman, like the media has projected and society has projected this idea of what sales actually is. But it's really important to flip that script to understand that sales are helpful. It's a service. And until like we wholeheartedly believe that sales isn't hurting anyone else, and it's just a part of the process to make sure that we're being able to serve someone, it's kind of hard to master it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So, okay. So you took that, you sold $150,000 worth of product in the first 6 months. Tell us how you did that, and then tell us how you've taken that to the next level, right? Because you now are up in the 7-figure range of sales, correct?
Yeah, I am. So I think that the biggest thing in the beginning was just like understanding why sales psychology is important and how we can implement that. So in my opinion, why sales psychology is important is because we need to understand why we're doing what we're doing in order to potentially make changes to that sales process, right? Knowledge is power, literally. So if you're doing something wrong, but you don't know what it is you're doing or why you're doing it, you're not going to know what to change. And it's the same thing if something goes right, you won't know why you were doing it. So you won't really know how to replicate or what to replicate. Right. So it's just important to have a firm understanding about why you're doing the things you're doing, instead of just kind of doing cookie cutter practices that you've kind of seen be standard in the industry. Yeah. I think really taking it to that custom sales process level is what kind of helped push me over the top. People love to buy things, but they don't necessarily love to be sold to. So it's kind of like driving a car, if you will. People still want to be in the sale or in the driver's seat. They still want to feel like they have control over the situation in the scenario. It's our job to almost be the GPS, if you will. And so the questions that we're asking and the content that we're putting out and the sales and marketing strategies that we're using is really, the goal is to kind of be that navigation system that shows them how to get where they want to go, but still allows them to feel in control. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. That's really what I think allowed me to kind of take it to that initial top level. And then from there, just kind of digging into like your personal brand and really having like a USP and a unique selling position is really, really impactful.
Okay. So, we, as you might know, we provide branding services to every single one of our agents. Some agents want to just do a branding refresh. And of course, there's misnomers about what the heck branding is in the first place, right? Like, is branding a logo?
No.
Exactly. We're going to go there, right? So, but there's some recognizable features of branding, right? So that when you see something, that's this person, right? Like, there's some kind of recognition aspects to it, but then there's also like the brand, like your perspective of branding, I'm sure has a lot to do with like digital branding and digital imprinting, if you will. And I'd love for people to understand the difference between a logo branding kind of thing and what you mean by that, and then get into this whole consumer psychology, sales psychology concept, because we can actually, as agents, we can actually use sales psychology as like one of our USPs, right? Like, we can meet with a client and say, oh, and by the way, I'm an expert in sales psychology. Okay, tell me what that means, because you're not going to hear that from a lot of agents. Right. If you say, I'm an expert in sales psychology, right? I'm steeped in sales psychology, because by the way, you actually want a sales psychology, like you want an expert in sales psychology, right? You want a really good negotiator working for you and, with you to sell your most expensive asset or help you buy your most expensive asset. Yeah. There's not one other thing that you're going to spend on a single transaction. I don't care. Most people are not going to go and spend, I don't know, down in this area, 800 grand on a stock purchase. in
Yeah.
one hit, right? Maybe down the road later in life, right? But even then, you're not going to go buy one stock, 800,000 of it, right? So this is the single transaction purchase, and why sales psychology matters. I'm going on a rabbit trail because it's so exciting for me to just have you kind of unpack this whole what is branding question.
Yeah. So when we think about why we should build a personal brand, I just want to be like specific in what a personal brand really is more about like your visual identity, which a lot of people consider like logo, and how that matches your messaging, your communication, all of that kind of comes into play. Now, why, when it comes to building a personal brand, this is so important is because no matter how much expertise you have, you will never be the only person doing what you do, right? So by creating a personal brand that's kind of almost uniquely and unmistakably yours, you're going to be able to differentiate yourself from other people who offer something similar. This is why it's more important than just a logo. A logo can't be the only reason you're different from someone else who's selling the same thing, houses. So for example, we want to just make sure that it's not just you relying on, reviews and testimonials and referrals, which I know is a big market for real estate agents. You guys probably have a lot of your business come from that. However, when you're building a personal brand, it goes beyond that. And yes, social proof, right, is an important part of a healthy business. And you definitely want people to speak really highly of their firsthand experience kind of with your work and working with you, because that can bring in new people to the door. But are you going to really trust someone else to tell your story for you? And if your clients haven't heard it directly from you first, how are they going to know what to say, right? So bottom line, we just want to make sure that like, yes, quality and social proof are essential, but they can't sustain your business by themselves. Because if you're facing any kind of type of competition, right, as most of us are, you're going to need to educate people about why they should choose you over anyone else. And that's where your personal brand comes into play. What I like to, encourage people to do is really focus on their USP. Now, when you're focusing on creating a USP, you can kind of go two routes. You can either create a unique method or a unique brand. So the unique method could be something along the lines with standing out with the how, right? The client experience, your speed, your quality, knowing sales psychology, being a very good negotiator, whatever you deem in how you deliver, right? Or the unique brand is more standing out with yourself, right? Your experience, whether that's your time in the industry, your connections, your networking, or your journey personally on that level. So when I ask people to create kind of a USP and to think about these things, I'm going to ask them a few questions, leading with a few things like, what do your competitors do that you don't agree with, right? What do you hate about your industry potentially, or like, what's a pet peeve? What do you think you can do better than other people? What's a gap that you see often, and then again, what is your ideal client's value in regards to what you're selling? What are their desires? What beliefs do they hold true about your industry, both good and bad? Those questions that you ask yourself are super, super valuable.
Yeah, that is great. You cut out, actually. Did you say something else? Oh, you're cutting.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, now I can. April, was she cutting out?
No, I think it was you, because you started cutting out when you were saying if she was cutting out. Sorry.
Oh, by the way, you both say, does that make sense at the end of like sentences? I can tell your sisters because of that, actually. So, okay. So talk to us about this whole detaching the value of your work from the value of yourself. It's so intriguing. And at such a young age, normally realizing the difference between your work and your value is something that comes like later on in life. So I'm interested how you arrived at that and speak to that. I'd love for people to hear that in this organization.
Yeah, I think that when I first started in business, I was 19, I was really new, and I definitely mixed those lines pretty frequently. I, thought, and I'm not sure if anyone else hears stuff like this too, but when I always heard, like charge your worth and like all these things. And it was kind of like interchangeable with value. And I think that that's where people get a little tripped up, right? Is because at the end of the day, we are worth more than what anyone could pay us. Like we are human beings. Like we can't put a monetary value on us. And so I think it's really important to change that language to value. And when it comes to detaching them, you have to understand that when it comes to sales, it's not about us. Right? If we are putting all that focus on us, it's actually a really selfish point of view when you think about it, because yes, we want to, monetarily, get something out of it for spending time. But at the end of the day, the goal really should be to have the person on the opposite end, that client, make an empowered decision, whether that's a yes or a no. And when we start blurring that with just wanting to get a yes and just starting to kind of really pull back in these really masculine and like dominant tactics of like, how can I just convince them to buy, right? It starts to be less about them and more about us. And when we put that focus on us is when those lines can be blended, instead of making sure that we're being able to detach us from whether or not we get a yes or a no. Like if we've done everything we can, and we've run the sales process the way that we know is empowering and works, and they are still not buying, that's not on us, that's on them. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I think it's really important to just make sure that we are understanding when we could do better, right? And being able to like critically self-analyze our process to know when we make a mistake and how we can change that, versus at the end of the day, when it really is up to them to kind of make that final call.
Okay, so you introduced this topic around like feminine sales approach, right? Versus a masculine sales approach, and the value around that kind of feminine sales approach. And by the way, if you're a man on this call, this is also for you, right? It's not like you get to check out during this time. And I think it's really interesting. Please explain the difference and the value there of that feminine sales approach.
Yeah,
I'm still looking for a different way to say it for guys so that they don't say it out, but yeah.
I think it's really, but here's the thing. At the end of the day, we both have masculine, both genders experience masculine and feminine qualities within ourselves. Like that's not to say that men only experience masculine qualities and females only experience feminine. However, in today's day and age, I'm not sure if you've heard of this statistic, but women are driving 70 to 80% of consumer decisions, whether that's in swiping the card or influencing the decision. At the end of the day, a lot of times more women are helping make bigger purchasing decisions. And women, when it comes to selling to them, do not respond to very like hard sale masculine tactics. And so it's important to make sure that we're infusing these more feminine tactics, like being able to collaboratively problem solve and different things like that, to make women feel like they're being heard, they're being seen, different things like that. And I think that the sales industry is kind of been formed, and society has kind of taught us what we should, kind of view sales as, which is like car salesman-y or very like swindly and sleazy. You'll hear those words like sales is gross and manipulative. Like, I don't want to be a salesperson. And that's just because it's been formed in this very like masculine way, when in reality, we can kind of bring in these more feminine tactics, like, using emotional intelligence and being able to read the room, and just making sure that we are using question and answers in a way that we can respond, not to just like say what we want to say, but actually listening to their desires and hearing people out, things like that, which is really, really important. And when it comes to sales psychology, there's actually a few ways that we can implement this that are a little bit more feminine tactics, that just help build relationships with people versus just focusing on the sale. So one way we can do that is through building a yes ladder. I'm not sure if you're familiar with this at all. But, huh?
Please share that. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So building a yes ladder is probably one of my favorite sales psychology tactics. It's one that I think almost everyone can implement very easily. Like I would love all of you guys to get off of this call and go implement something like this into your sales process. But basically what this means is the more times that they say yes to you before a sale, the more likely they are to say yes to you later, right? So it's basically kind of conditioning. And basically a yes ladder is almost built in reverse. So you think about like what you're looking for your clients to say yes to you on the highest level, right? Which is saying yes to buying a house with you, right? And then once you've figured out your goal, you're going to work on building the steps that will lead your customer to giving you the answer that you want them to give you at the end.
Yeah.
So we start with attention, right? That's kind of the top of what I would say the yes ladder is. So this kind of goes back into building this personal brand as well. But like, even if personal details seem irrelevant to your work, they really serve as connection points to your clients, right? Signals that you're going to understand them better than someone else might, which again goes to that USP. So for example, some of the connection points that I have are, right, I'm a woman, I'm a mom, I'm young, I love dogs. These are pretty simple. They're not anything crazy. And none of these things necessarily make me better as a sales expert than anyone else. But they do kind of give off a signal that I might be able to be the right person to teach you how to sell, because I can relate to you on any of those things. And if I can, you already know that I'll kind of understand at least some aspect of who you are, right? It's actually called the similarity attraction effect. So people gravitate towards other people essentially who have something important in common with them, especially interests, attitudes, values. So if you're somebody who like appreciates like a no bullshit, kind of like no fluff, like direct approach, when someone else speaks like that, you're already going to be like, oh, I like them, right? Because of that similarity effect. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of Yes Ladder, have you read the book Never Split the Difference?
Yeah, I have, which is
I'm sure
great.
you loved it. Yeah. But it's so interesting when you talk about like, women basically being a part of so much of like consumer spending, right? And I used to think, oh, they're just a part of like in the big purchase, right? Like the pushing it through for a new car purchase or like a new house. But no, it's down to like when a guy shaves his beard off, right?
Yeah.
Like it's like, it's everything, right? And so there's a lot of influence out there. And then when I look at how many, female realtors we have in our team, right? I mean, it's obviously a huge amount of there's obviously a huge amount of female realtors in our company. And then obviously in California, it's obviously always weighted more in the female range, right? And when you look at that kind of home and that place of refuge, right? Like the decision, that's even the male buyers that are, they're looking for that kind of special place of refuge. What is that? That's really kind of that like, and I don't want to say feminine sales psychology aspect, but I guess that's what you're saying, right? That
it's
really
more
kind of leans in that direction.
Yeah, it leans more in an emotional purchase,
yes,
right? So it's not like the
emotional
tactic,
purchase decision making versus dollars and cents decision making, right? So when you start looking at it that way, it's like, well, of course, everyone, including men, are buying from an emotional perspective. Like, there's it's got to at least be 2,500 square feet, and I definitely need a 3-car garage because the third bay is going to be where I put my workshop in. But that workshop, by the way, has to do with emotions, right?
So masculine tactics normally work for what I call like impulse buys, right? Or something where it's like a quick spending decision where they just kind of want to know the facts and like the hard details. But when it comes to an emotional purchase, something bigger, they want to feel like they can imagine themselves in that standpoint, which is where these more feminine tactics kind of come into play. And just kind of going back to that Yes Ladder, Rich Johnson had put in the chat using tie down questions, which is exactly what it is. Using like things that don't lead to them being able to say a bunch of things other than yes or no. You want them to say yes to you continuously. So don't you agree? Isn't that right? Repeating what they say back to them so that way they can say, yes, you get it. You read my mind.
Let me throw it at you. Like I've been in sales a long time. When someone's leading me down a Yes Ladder, road, I know they're doing it.
Oh yeah.
Right. And so what I love is the Never Split the Difference reminder that letting people protect themselves by saying actually no to something first, right? Like for me, like my kids, used to ask me if they could drive down into, Seattle, which is definitely not the suburbs where we live, right? And there's like all these hills and, and he had a manual car and I just couldn't imagine like him going down into Seattle for a concert, right? And so I would say no first, right? Why did I say no? Just to protect myself. Like, we're just going to go into this conversation with a no, and then I'm going to let you sell me. Just so you know, it's already a no until you sell me on something beyond that, right? So there's something to be said for, Chris Voss mentioning, let the consumer protect themselves, right? Like, no, I don't want a house. No, I don't want this kind of house, right? Or no, I would never sell without anything less than X, right? These are protective ways for consumers to protect themselves first before they start saying yes.
And it's really important for them to be able to voice those things to you, to feel like you know what they don't want, right? Especially from an emotional buying perspective, they want to feel like you truly understand what they do want and what they don't want. So just having that opportunity, I feel like, is really, really important as well.
And tie down question doesn't not mean that you're tying people down, correct?
It doesn't what?
Mean that you're tying people down.
Talking people down. I don't know what you mean.
Tying.
Oh, tying. Yeah.
Okay, got it. Yeah. So, okay. All right. Okay. So tell us a little bit more on this. Yeah.
On the yes ladder.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So it starts with attention. That's kind of that first level, which is, do they relate? Do you have their attention? Do they relate to you? The next is interest, right? So are they in your niche, right? Are they somebody who's interested, in buying, and you want them to keep saying yes to you? Yes, they're interested in buying. And this comes through your social content a lot, or this comes through any sort type of marketing conversations. April had put in the chat, social posts, email verbiage, postcards, things like that. This is where you kind of want to get them to say yes to you on these like more broader statement posts. And then from there, so it goes attention, interest, desire is next. They want your desired outcome of what you're selling to them. So you have to think about what big picture emotions, right? What are their emotional motivators to want to buy, right? You want them to say yes to those. And then from there, it's all about your desired action. So are they ready to buy from you? So that's kind of the 4 points that you want to make sure you're hitting while building this yes ladder.
Awesome. Well, we have the benefit of April knowing a lot more about you than I know. I've known you for 30 minutes, basically, when we had our prep call. And I've asked April to ask some questions as well, because I know she can ask some stuff that I don't even know. Like, the crazy time you did this or the crazy time you did that. Like she could like tell us some funny stories, right?
I do have a question in the chat too. I think it was sent to me privately. If you want, I can answer that.
Oh yeah, let's answer that too. And then April, I know you have a couple questions.
Cool. So it looks like Nancy had said, how does the male-female issue apply to other genders or not apply, such as, so more like cultures, such as like Indian, Middle Eastern, Chinese. Every culture is going to have a different dynamic on how they approach finances and buying. I know that there are some cultures too who, the man is completely in charge of finances and stuff. But I do think that even then there's emotionality that goes beyond the purchase when they're buying something that's $800,000, for example. So I think that the feminine tactics still apply to both genders, which is really, really important. It's just that it tends to apply more when you're buying or when you're selling to a female specifically, because that tends to be more what resonates with them. But I think it both applies just because it's such an emotionally driven decision-making factor that you still want to sell emotionally. But this is something that I was actually prepared to talk about, which is just every single person that you talk to is going to be almost a different buying type. There's 4 different types of buying types. I talk about this in my book, and this kind of goes back to just like decision-making behavior in general. Like you guys can look up this whole method. I've kind of put it into layman's terms. There's 4 different types. The first one being a bottom line buyer. That's what I call them. This is somebody who cares about the details, the facts. They have a really short buying cycle. So this is, I would consider myself this buying type. I make decisions really quick. I'm very impulsive. I bought a house actually last June. I decided I was going to buy a house, and within 2 weeks I had offers put in. Like I was just like very, very quick in my decision making, and I moved very fast, and I needed someone who on the realtor side was going to match that energy. The next person would be somebody who needs a personal connection. This is somebody who potentially would follow you on social media for months and months and months, really needs to consume your content, have a personal relationship with you, really knows that like attention wise, like that they relate to you on a personal level. This is somebody with a little bit of a longer buying cycle. They really just value more of that personal connection. So it just takes them longer to kind of press that yes button, if you will. Person 3 is somebody who goes off of gut feeling, intuition. This is somebody who's like, it has to feel right. They maybe step into a house and they're like, I don't know, it just doesn't feel like the right me. I'm sure you guys have felt that before or had people tell you that. And then number 4 is someone who's like hyper analytical, almost somebody who's going to crunch every number and be like, well, what if we had to do this? Or what if we had to change this? Right. So there's 4 different types of buyers that you're going to get. And it's really imperative to make sure that when you're, talking to a client, how to meet them where they're at and kind of mirror that buying behavior within yourself in order to sell to them. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
What other questions do you have, April?
So I have a few questions, and I also know Sierra has a few questions. So one question I have is that Karrie has really built a audience in a very specific type in all different industries. So I really push as a marketing person, and the marketing team really push about, cultivating an audience, whether that's through your email list, through your social media platform, or even we have a lot of agents who do outside events who are very community activists. Tell us a little bit about what are 3 things that they should know and relate back to that sales yes ladder when it comes to cultivating an audience?
Yeah, I think when it comes to cultivating an audience, one thing to really remember is that when you're trying to build a community, people like to act how other people are acting. So when you're trying to build like engagement on social media, or just trying to get other people involved and kind of position yourself as that authority figure within your community, as you are doing that, other people, it's important to like highlight when people view you that way. So when people are in your DMs asking questions, when people are voting on your polls, or sending you anything and putting you in a position of authority, you want to reshare that. So the bulk of your audience also gets to go ahead and see that as well. So I think that it's important just to show your community that you're being viewed as an authority to help other people view you that way as well. It's just kind of the same, like when we see someone do something, we're like, oh, all of a sudden we feel like we want to do that too. It really goes kind of hand in hand with building a community, as people act similarly to other people. So that would probably be like my number one way. And then I also think just really focusing on not building an audience for numbers, but building a community for relationships. I think that, I like to talk to my audience in a way where I'm making sure that I'm not ever referencing them as followers. I reference them as like supporters, or somebody who is like in my community, just making sure that the language we use there is really beneficial to them, as far as like, this is my community, this is what I'm trying to create, or I'm serving you. Just making sure that that language is really important. Does that make sense?
It does, yes. Another question we have is, what has been the number one skill set you didn't expect was needed that has proved the most useful for your success in the industry?
I would say adapting my communication style. Like when I was talking about those 4 different types of buyers, I think that is the number one skill set anyone could have, because if you can mirror what somebody is doing to you, I think it's so detrimental to only sell one way. Because like, let's say, for example, I said I'm a more dominant bottom line buyer. If I only sold that way, I would be excluding 3/4 of the other people, right, that could potentially want to buy from me. So being able to adapt your communication style and mirror someone else, and really be able to give them exactly what they need in that moment, as far as like what they need to hear or what they need to believe, that is probably the most, I honestly call it being able to read the room. Like that's the most undervalued skill in sales, is being able to read the room and be able to really mirror communication styles.
Awesome. Thank you. And you know what? I just have a personal question I think would really relate to everyone here, is that if you could give us one action step for every single realtor who's on this call to go and take from, your knowledge, what would that action step be?
I think that action step would be just to really hone in on that personal brand. I'm sure April has probably also just been trying to like bury you guys in the fact that you should be building a personal brand, but it's just so, so, so important when it comes to making people want to buy from you. And not someone else. I mean, I'm sure you guys hear this all the time, or have said the words, why would someone buy from me when someone else is selling the same thing? And that is because of that personal brand. Making sure that you're educating, you're building that know, like, and trust factor, giving them either micro wins on the education sides, as far as like understanding, and just having them connect with like personal experience and understanding of your actual industry. I just think that building a personal brand is so, so important. If there's one thing that I hope you take away from this, it's just that personal brand side and social media, and being able to utilize that new kind of standard almost of sales and new wave of marketing that's coming through is so, so, so important.
Awesome. Thank you. I know Suzanne has popped in that we kind of talk a lot about the things that you're mentioning in our Ninja selling classes. Suzanne is an amazing coach within our company, who works awesome. Really close to one-on-one with our agents. There she is. I see her. She just popped on. Suzanne, do you want to say anything?
I was just going to say, yeah, I mean, it's really cool that, the crossover between, what you do and what we teach our agents on a weekly basis. It's really nice to see that everything kind of tie in. Because as I'm listening to, I'm like, yes, yes, yes.
Yeah.
It's always nice
So-
to have multiple people saying it too, because sometimes one person says it and they're like, no, and then they hear it from someone else and they're like, okay, like I guess I can do it.
Yes. So thank you for the crossover. I'm loving it.
Of course.
Karrie and I have this thing that we say to each other because we both have kids around the same age, and it's the mom and pop thing. So it's very much like they hear it from the same person over and over again. It's like, okay, mom, whatever, mom. And then they hear it from someone else and they're like, oh, dang, they were right. And you're like, what the heck? I've been saying this the entire time for you. So it's definitely something that we see a lot of. Sergio had posted a question. How can you save a sale if you are trying to mirror the buyer, but they feel that you're coming off as just that, just trying to connect, desperately?
I think it's kind of hard when it's a little bit situational as far as like knowing what you've done previously. But I think that if you're starting to feel like they're almost kind of perceiving you as somebody who's like kind of like just doing something just to save face, I kind of take it back, right? I start asking more questions. I start making sure that they're the ones leading the conversation. Normally, if someone is like feeling like you're just coming off trying to connect, they don't feel in control of the sales process anymore. So I think it's really important in that moment to put them back in the driver's seat. You kind of take a step back. Remember, you're just the GPS. You're just someone trying to help them navigate it. And so what's important is put them back in the driver's seat by asking them questions and let them feel they're not really leading the conversation. You are with your questions, but let them feel like they are. Let them feel some of that power come back. And then they'll be like, okay, now I feel a little bit more in control. I think that perspective from the client side comes from feeling that lack of control or feeling like they are not the ones making the decision. They feel like you're making it for them almost. And so I would really just suggest like, okay, what are some prompting questions that you can come up with now that are going to just put the power back in their hands? I hope that makes sense.
Definitely. And Sierra, do you have any questions that you want to add here?
You have a few. Just stop me whenever we need to get off questions. But so the first one is when people hear psychology, if they become a little standoffish just because of the word, how do you explain to them, like your clients, how important it is when they're selling anything?
Yeah, I think sales psychology is really important. I think it can be off-putting just because it seems complicated. The word psychology in and of itself sounds a little intimidating almost because it's such like a big thing. But what I like to do anytime I'm using kind of language that may feel complicated is really break it down, right? So if I was going to approach and say like, okay, sales psychology is really important to use, the why is always right immediately after. So that way people, it's not kind of left up to their own mind to put a reason behind it. It's like sales psychology is so important to use because it's just important to know that there's a reason and intention behind every single thing that we're doing. We're never doing anything blind. And then all of a sudden they're like, that makes sense. Why would we ever want to do something without intention, right? So it's just about putting that reasoning right after you use something that can feel a little intimidating.
And you mentioned your book as well too. And so your book, Don't Settle for a Seat, where did the idea come from? And then when did you kind of just decide I'm going to turn this into a book?
Oh yeah. So the idea really came from from just the point of it's easy to feel like we have to fit into what we've been taught. Society has taught us sales is, right? So that's how, at least it was for me when I first got started in business. I thought I was really changing myself and what I expected and what I thought I knew to fit what other people told me business had to be like, or what other people told me sales had to be like. So that's where the name come from, Don't Settle for a Seat. Just don't settle for this idea of you have to fit this mold when in reality, like we're in control, right? And there's more than one way to do something. So we can really take the reins, rewrite the rules, and have something that's better suited for us when it comes to, sales and what we know is going to work. That idea, honestly, has just come from just being in the sales space for so long. And so many people coming to me and being like, oh, I don't think I'm cut out for entrepreneurship, or I don't think I'm cut out to be in sales. I didn't get into this to be in sales, just because of this projected idea of what they thought they had to do or be in order to fit the mold. And so it's really just about kind of breaking that mold down, breaking that old masculine dominant tactics down to be like, that's not necessarily even what's working anymore. So let's rewrite the rules to kind of be successful in a different light, if that makes sense.
I have one more if we're still good on time. This is more just about your personal brand. Just because everything is ever changing, how often do you see your personal brand change, and how often is it okay to change it?
Yeah, that's actually a very, very good question. That's actually something I was just talking about on social media recently too, because a lot of people, I talk about when it comes to content and your personal brand, having what I call brand pillars. So these are things that you're going to touch on continuously over time. Now, I think it's okay for those brand pillars to change and for your personal brand to change as you change, right? Because you're really selling yourself as a person who's selling a service, and as a personal brand, you're selling yourself. And so for me, my personal brand changed when I became a mom. Like that was something that was like a pretty easy flip of a switch, right? When things were changing for me, it was an effortless switch to change them within my personal brand. If things are feeling disconnected, like if you're feeling like you're having a hard time showing up or just selling in general, and the content that you're putting out doesn't feel aligned, I would say that's a really clear sign intuition wise to like change your personal brand and kind of reevaluate things. So anytime you're feeling a disconnect, anytime something big is happening in your life that changes, you change, there's like monumental moments where your lifestyle changes, things like that, it seems like a pretty effortless switch to also come across that way through your personal brand.
Okay, so I appreciate that. Thank you, Sarah, and thank you, April. And you guys pipe up if you got more, because we've got a little bit more time. We've got about 15 more minutes or 10 minutes left. And I'm going to give all of you guys an opportunity for a sneak peek into this book launch that's coming up as well, and learning more about the book, getting access to that. But before I do, let me tell you, this industry is fraught with perfectionism. In fact, most agents that I have ever met are perfectionists. I mean, it's just, to the point where the perfectionism actually gets in the way of moving forward, because a lot of times we get so wrapped up in perfection that we are frozen, right? Yep. And so there's that smaller group of agents that have kind of learned how to, I'm a perfectionist, but I also got to do it, right? I have to do the work. I have to do that video that doesn't look perfect, right? Or, I have to, at one point, I just, need to accept these photos. I hired a guy, he took these photos, I got to accept these photos and then sell the house, right? Or even in the contract, right? Sometimes we get so, like, we want to do so much for our clients, right? That our clients are even happy. Our buyer clients are already happy with the deal they're getting, or our seller, they're happy, but we're not, right? So our perfectionism kind of sometimes gets in the way. And so what I'm interested in is your concept around curbing perfectionism.
Yeah.
And I'm betting that you've had to learn how to do this, right? Yeah. So I want to, and so I'd love to hear from you on this, and to help the many agents that are on this call that would benefit.
I think the first step to curbing it is to stop wearing it as a badge of honor. A lot of people you will hear.
So perfect.
Yeah, a lot of people you will hear. It's kind of like everyone's favorite interview question when they're like, "What's your worst quality?" And they're like, "Oh, I'm a perfectionist." Like they love to wear it as this like subtle slide thing.
Or they say it's also my best quality. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Right. So they love to wear it almost as this badge of honor, something that they're almost subtly proud of, the fact that they're like, when in reality, perfectionism is debilitating. It's actually debilitating. And we all experience it to a certain degree. It's almost like a sliding scale rather than do you have it or do you not have it? And to a low degree, yes, it's helpful to encourage us to meet standards, right? And to feel good about what we're putting out and making decisions. And that questioning shouldn't go away necessarily. However, it's to the point when it stops action, right? When that's kind of almost like a fear that comes out. I think imposter syndrome also and perfectionism are kind of closely tied together in the fact of like, oh, I don't want to be discovered as a fraud. I don't want them to think I didn't do my best work. It stems a lot from outside judgment, right? But it's that internal pressure. No one's putting it on us but ourselves. And so for me, I think, like I said, the first step is really to stop deciding that that's how you want to identify. And then in my opinion, one of the best ways to get over it is to start saying yes more often and just doing things. The best way to get through perfectionism and get over it is just by action, because the direct result of perfectionism is inaction. So the more you can say yes, the more you can just do, and work on putting that pressure on yourself to just take action is going to be how kind of you work through it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I love it. I just love it. I absolutely, badge of courage, so true. Mm-hmm. And I read this, that the perfectionism ultimately holds us away from others. It doesn't get us closer to others. it actually holds us back from others. And in this crazy relationship business that we're in, we can't afford to be held away from clients, or, you know what I mean? We need to be, or even away from the agent that, you know, has listed the property that we're trying to create a rapport with so that they select our offer over someone else's, right?
Yep.
Our perfectionism sometimes holds us away from relationship.
Yeah.
And so there's,
Oh,
yeah.
go ahead.
No, go for it. Yeah. What's your thoughts on that?
I mean, I totally agree. I think there's a lot of what we want the perfectionism to do for us, and our justification of it a lot of times is like, oh, well, we just want to be the best, or we just want to do X, Y, and Z. But that inaction, or that like double thinking and all these things actually cause us to be worse at what we're doing. Right. And so it's important to realize that, yes, like we're creating this internal justification for why we're doing things, but it's important to think of the actual repercussions that come after, because it doesn't matter necessarily our intentions for it, but what's actually happening and that impact that's then trickling therefore. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, okay, tell us more about this book. Tell us about the event, and you were even willing to offer free tickets for our group if they would like to attend the event. So tell us more about this.
So April and I were kind of talking, and I was like, I'd love to give away a VIP ticket to the event if anyone's coming. It's going to be a great, number one, networking opportunity for anyone in the area. It's actually going to be held in Simi Valley. So it's a little bit farther up, but it's going to be at a gorgeous venue, great content opportunities for any of you guys building your personal brand, but great networking opportunity, a ton of entrepreneurs. And the thing about it is really just showing that like, we can get together, we can form new rules. There's a new standard of doing sales, a new standard of doing business. That's kind of like what we're celebrating at that moment. I really wanted it to not just be about the book, but just to be like a great opportunity for everyone to build relationships after COVID. I know a lot of people are kind of missing that in-person connection, that just like getting out, getting around other people. And for your guys' industry, networking is so important. So I think that that's a really awesome play. So April and I were talking about kind of giving away a VIP ticket, which includes the VIP access to the event, as well as a book and a swag bag offer that kind of we're giving away as well.
Wonderful. And then how do they gain access to this?
So April, you can unmute yourself if you want. April said she was going to kind of maybe do like a little raffle, or she's the genius on that front.
So, you know, I kind of knocked on her door and put sales pressure on her to give us something for you guys for showing up and, you know, giving us, you know, your day today and an hour out of your time, because time equals money. And I know how important that is for everyone here. So Karrie has given the opportunity for me to hand out one free VIP ticket. It includes the book, the access to the event itself, some extra perks, and including a course on curbing that perfectionism as well. And I know we have a lot of those in our company. So I think it's going to be an amazing opportunity. And we will be taking everyone who registered for this event, and we'll be reaching out to an individual and posting it in our We Facebook group. And then I'll be sending over that information to Karrie. So wait for that email, wait for that post. It'll be coming today. And then for anyone else who's interested, and Karrie, I'll let you jump in on this in just a second. I will be posting Karrie's website and more information on how to purchase her book, how to purchase a ticket to the event as well. So I'll be putting that all in the comments below, and we'll be also posting that in the We Facebook group.
Yeah. Yeah. The general admission tickets are $25 to come to the event. And the book is like, I think around $18 if you guys wanted to just buy the book standalone. It's in pre-sale right now. It actually launches October 5th, which is the same day as the event. So it's launching soon. Anyone who pre-orders the book also will get a signed copy, which is kind of cool and exciting. But yeah, I hope this was a really beneficial sales training for you guys. If anyone has any questions too, I'm sure April will be posting my social media on my Instagram. You can feel free to DM me there as well. Because I'd love to just kind of have some conversations. Like I said, I've worked with realtors in the past. So if there's any like objections or any even situational things that you guys kind of want advice on, you can feel free to ask as well.
And I'm going to throw in and be the big sister here and tell you that what's really awesome about how Karrie connects with her audience online and on her social media platform is she will take the questions that she gets a lot in her DMs, and she will just start doing trainings on it. She will call you up and she'll be like, let's talk this through. She'll walk you through your scripts. She's a master at sales scripts as well. So if you are doing the cold calls, if you are getting, a little bit cold feet on connecting with people one-on-one and not feeling like you're fully ready or you're prepared, she is a great resource to go to. So I will be posting all of her socials in there, but I do highly recommend reaching out to her as a resource.
Thank you. Yeah, I really appreciate it. I think Instagram is kind of like my favorite little platform to be on. I'm pretty active on there. Like I said, if you guys DM me, I'd be more than happy to like kind of chit chat back and forth and offer some advice.
Awesome. All right. Well, Karrie, thank you so much for joining us, Karrie Brady Scott. Could you remind everyone just on the show, just because those comments are going to go away, and this is also live forever, evergreen, right? So could you remind people of your website?
Yeah, so it's just www.karriebrady.com. My name is spelled a little funky, so it's Karrie Brady, Brady like Tom Brady or the Brady Bunch, whichever one fits your fits your fancy. But and then same with Instagram, it's just at Karrie Brady, KarrieBrady.
Nice. Well, thank you so much for joining us. And thanks so much for just, I mean, it's an intro. We've got a lot more to learn from you. If you don't mind, we're going to invite you back after you launch the book. And I'd love to talk further. Thank you so much. And I just also want to give a shout out to everyone that it's just so cool to see people helping each other on our We Private group, We Private Facebook page. Like, for example, Giovanni was having an issue with a client that was locked out of her house, and both Vicky as well as Kirk jumped in there and was totally willing to just run over the house and take the key out of the lockbox. It's like, that's huge, right? I love being a part of an organization where we're just helping each other like that. And it was so cool to see that. Just wanted to give a shout out to both Kirk and Vicky for being willing to kind of help out. And everyone, on behalf of Rich Johnson and Windermere Homes and Estates and the 2,600 people or different sides of transactions that we do every single year, and hopefully more and more every year, our 500, just under 500 agents in the counties we serve. We just thank you so much for joining us. And we'll see you in a couple of weeks. And everyone have a wonderful weekend. Thanks so much, Karrie, again. And good luck to you on your book launch.
Thanks for having me here. I super appreciate it.